Welcome to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going beyond basic film criticism to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm your host, Nicole Finari, and with me today is...
Lexy.
And what movie are we overanalyzing this week?
We're talking about M3GAN or M3GAN, depending on how you want to pronounce this title.
Okay, so synopsis. Designed by brilliant toy company roboticist Gemma Allison Williams, M3GAN can listen and watch and learn as she becomes friend and teacher, playmate and protector for the child she's bonded to. When she becomes the caretaker of 8-year-old niece Katie, played by Violet McGraw, Gemma's unsure and prepared to be a parent. Under intense pressure at work, Gemma decides to pair her M3GAN prototype with violent results. So, this is not mine. It's from a Vox article, but like my little Gen X heart, this is the best thing anybody ever said about this movie, and I'm gonna I'm gonna let the listeners fill in with the bad word that we do not use on the show. Is someone described the movie as, "What if Small Wonder was a witch?"
Okay.
And you know what Small Wonder is? No. Like a TV show in the 80s, and I was like, that is really funny. And I was like, Lexi's not going to get it, but I have to say it on camera.
This is for the other Gen X listeners.
Yes. I was like, that's too funny. What did you think?
I had a great time. I really like this movie. It definitely, if you've seen the trailer, it is what you expect from a trailer like this movie's trailer. It's very fun. It's out there in some ways, and I saw it with a group of friends, and we were all laughing through the whole movie. What'd you think?
I liked it. There were so many like little dumb issues in the movie, which I will elucidate in excruciating detail. That I thought were like just sloppy filmmaking, and I was very annoyed that it was sloppy in those ways, because I think overall it was like a decent movie. So I'm like, I liked it, but I'm like, man, it's just certain things I was just like, this is so bad. Like, why? Like, someone should have caught this and someone should have corrected it.
You're talking about like errors where like something's included in the shot that shouldn't have been included in? I'm not sure. So,
for example, one of the big early issues I had with the movie is that Gemma, played by Allison Williams, she makes a comment. She's like, I can't even keep a plant alive.
Mm-hmm.
Her apartment is covered in live plants. Or her house is covered in live plants. There's plants everywhere. There's plants in every freaking shot.
Oh, okay.
And I was like,
they could be fake.
They weren't.
Okay.
But it was just sort of like, why would you have that line and then have the art direction be plants everywhere? Like, that was very annoying. And I was like, that's like a dumb error that you shouldn't have made.
Yeah, I guess it's like they were thinking of one thing in isolation and the other thing in isolation, and both of those are fine separately, but together are yeah, I can see that strange.
Yeah. So there's also like very early on, somebody, the CEO, the boss, gets mad and like throws an iPad to the crowd. And I'm like, I know there are workplaces where people have anger management issues and they break equipment, but like, this is a trope in movies that absolutely has to stop.
Okay.
Like, this is very annoying. And I think I have said this before. This was like one of the issues I had with The Phantom Menace. I think it was The Phantom Menace.
Oh.
I don't know. Adam Driver like goes on a rampage and starts like lightsabering through like on all the consoles on this ship, and I'm like, how much damage did you like? How much money is that? You can't just go around destroying like
I thought that
company like equipment.
I love that, and I think it's in The Force Awakens.
Okay, I don't even know what they're called. So
I don't know. I love that scene because like clearly, well, this is off topic. Clearly, he's like a child, and so I think he's just not thinking about like how much everything's gonna cost. He's just like,
right. And but you're like, you just don't get to behave that way at work, and number two, if you behave that way at work, like you're gonna get fired. Like, there are going to be consequences. Like, can you imagine just like picking up your work computer and throwing it to the ground and having your boss be like, that's okay, we'll just buy you another one. Like, no, I don't know. It's dumb, but it's like, that irks me. So...
I think we will analyze some deeper points in this movie, but this movie is also at the same time, like, you're not supposed to take it too seriously in some ways. Like, I think I know the word in a lot of the reviews I saw, like, it's very campy, it's, like, ridiculous. Like, if you've seen the trailer, like, there's a lot of ridiculous, like, stuff in this movie where you're like, what is going on here? But it's, like, funny, and that's part of what makes it enjoyable. My only downside that I wrote down was that I do think that I think the trailer revealed a little bit too much. I think I still laughed at all the funny moments in the trailer, but there were some extra things, like when she starts singing during the demonstration I like lost it, and I was like, this is crazy and so funny, and I was not expecting her to sing. But I think I wish the trailer would have revealed a little bit less. But also the trailer is partly, I think, the trailer was so ridiculous. I think that's what got the butts in the seat for this movie, partially.
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, and this will come up when we give the social impact score. It's done, like, incredibly well. It's doing very well. Yeah, so I just want to get a few nitpicks out of the way, because I do think they're minor. Okay, so, like, there's one point she, like, runs on all fours. And you're like, why would she run on all fours when she can run perfectly well on two legs? Like, that makes no sense.
Because it's ridiculous.
I know, and it's not any faster. And then another sort of nitpick about the movie, and this is personal. You know, like, your mileage may vary on this. This is something I didn't like. I didn't like all of the noise. Like, every eye blink had a noise. She would turn her head and there'd be a whirring noise. There was, like, all this special, like, sound effects added in, which I thought were overdone.
Okay.
And they were constantly there as, like, reminders that, you know, she's not a real girl, blah, blah, blah. But I could have dealt with that scaled back some. Okay. It was too much. Again, like, every eye blink, like, everything. And
specifically on M3GAN.
On M3GAN, yeah. So, like, M3GAN's sound design was a little bit too much for me. Like, I think that, personally, I think it would have been scarier if we had fewer reminders.
Okay.
That she was a robot, so that when she did something totally crazy, it would be like, oh, right, she's not, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't work for me, and I was like, I don't personally think this was a good artistic choice, but I can't say for sure that it you know, like, it didn't work for me, but it could have worked for other people. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've seen the movie at this point, and it's not something, at least, that if I thought it then, it's not something that I remembered after the fact. So, yeah.
Yeah,
maybe.
So for a programming note for our listeners, apologies. I got exposed to COVID, and then we couldn't record for an extra 10 days while I had to wear a mask. So poor Lexy is sometime out. Then it's been a longer lag time than we normally do recording these. So it's a little fresher in my mind. And then, yeah, I sent you the clip of this. I thought, and there was somebody, I read, again, reviewers getting too young. I read a review of somebody who was like, oh, there was that amazing shot of her among, like, all the stuffed animals.
Oh, yeah, from the trailer.
And I was like, oh, really? I, like, flew right over the person's head. I sent you the clip that was a deliberate homage to E.T.
Right.
I was like, dude, man. Go back to film school. No, I'm not going to be snobby, but I was just like, oh, how did you miss that? That was like E.T., man. I thought that was great. Yeah,
I said before, like, I thought it was campy, but not cheesy in a way that turned me off to the movie in any way. But also, there was kind of this weird dynamic where, excusing the lines that maybe didn't, there was a couple that I thought, like, didn't make, like you were talking about with the plant line, that I did think that the interactions, like, I think they did feel real in a way to me. Like, I thought, I don't know if that's a credit to, like, the acting or the writing, but for, like, the normal interactions, they did feel, like, very, like, normal to me. And I thought, like, the scenes were done pretty well. Either, like, the talking of the parents in the beginning before they crash, or kind of some of the beginning lines between, I forget all their names, Gemma and the
Katie.
and Katie. Yeah. I thought those were great. Or I felt very ingrained into the movie in a weird, or like
immersed.
Yeah, I felt immersed in a way into the movie that I wasn't expecting for a movie like this, but also then it divulges into like the crazy aspects when the doll comes alive and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I will say, Allison Williams was fine. I really wanted to smack that little girl, which is a credit to her performance. Like, I think that the little girl was great. She was really annoying when she needed to be really like a total brat. And
definitely.
She was affecting when she needed to be affecting. Great, for a child actress, like, I thought she did a really, really great job. I definitely think, and like, let's go into the like, technology. Like, M3GAN made this movie, right? Mm-hmm. The quality of the doll was, again, I can nitpick the sound effects. Okay, I didn't love that. I also didn't love her point of view shots. I was like, there's not enough going on. It's just like, oh, her analyzing emotions. I was like, I didn't think those were very interesting, and I could have lived without them. But that aside, like, what made the movie so good was like how well done she was. Like, I also sent you a link up for the costume design. Yeah, and how they went through like so many different options and kind of the style they wanted. And also, I mean, I forget it was in that same article or someone else, but M3GAN is like a mix of, sometimes it was like a doll, and then sometimes it was an actress with like a mask on. Yeah. So I think having that kind of combo also helps with, she's real, but she's also not real, and kind of how incredible like the technology is supposed to be in the movie universe. Yeah, so I can't say enough. All hell practical effects. Fantastic. And the blend between when she was a doll and when she was a person was pretty seamless. Yeah. You remember like when she goes like limp or something? Yeah, I mean, like, you'd have to look really hard, and why would you? Like, don't waste your time, just enjoy the movie. Yeah. Like, we're sort of there as reviewers, but so that absolutely worked 1,000,000%. Like, like you said, all the interactions were really natural between her and everything else, because often, because she was a physical presence, that worked really well. I like intentionally looked up the costume design because it was so unique. Mm-hmm. It was such a statement. And I was like a little bit like, it felt like a little bit like an English girls like boarding school or Catholic, some kind of uniform. And yeah, there's like an air of sophistication, but she's also a small child. Yeah, but she's a doll, and obviously like the costume designer thought about this really hard, number one. And number two, to their credit, they were like, if we do this right, this is going to be the It Halloween costume. And I think it will be. I mean, already on TikTok, like, there's, I don't know if it looks like it's the same group of people, but I can't tell. I've seen multiple videos from multiple different people, partially in promotion for the movie, but they're really trying to make an impact with this costume of like having maybe like a group together at a convention, and people are doing the dance and, imitating stuff that she's done from the movie, and she's got like the hair, and it's like done really nicely, or like it's like at least it looks polished, and so I mean it's all very intentional, and I think they'll definitely succeed in that goal of being the It Halloween costume. Yeah, I mean they absolutely nailed it. It was a wonderful costume, and it was something. It was so notably just right. Like, they just nailed it. Like, I can't say enough good things about that costume in terms of giving you, yes, that this is going to be a $10,000 doll. Yeah. But she's still a doll. Like, they're like, they put those funky sunglasses on her, and they're like, she's still a doll. Yeah. you're still going to want, like, accessories and different outfits and coats and shoes.
Yeah,
and
coat or no coat.
Yeah, and I was like, mwah, chef's kiss to the costume designers, because I really think they nailed it. I think the voice work was terrific. I did like how they would edge out. You'd think as much time as I spent editing this podcast, I would know the words for this stuff. But, like, sometimes when she's talking, like, it doesn't purely sound just like a voice. There's like a digital effect that gets laid over on certain words and certain inflections. Like when she's calling and leaving that voicemail for Gemma, and Gemma listens to it, and she's like imitating somebody else's voice. They do like a digital effect in the voice where like
to like remind you that she's also still a robot.
Yeah, so it sounds a little AI. Like it sounds a little bit like your phone tree operator. They give it that quality. It's subtle and it's not all the time. And they again, it has great emotional effect. They time it very crisply in terms of like, she sounds like a little girl and you get seduced into Megan's universe and then something will happen that reminds you that she's a robot. And again, I thought they did that with the voice design a lot better than I thought they did that with the sound effect design.
Okay.
But all credit to the voice actress because she did a great job. Again, as well as the person who actually played her. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, and I just thought, I mean, it's one of those things like, I guess in 20 years we'll look back and think it looks like hinky technology, but it looked good to me and I'm usually the first.
Present day, it looks great.
It looked great. Yeah.
That's true. And maybe if you couldn't tell, listener, that I think, this is movies in the horror comedy genre. It's definitely more of a comedy than horror, I would say. There's a couple scary parts of it, but I saw it with a friend of mine who's very much of a scaredy cat, and she was, fine. She was nervous before the movie and was fine throughout the whole movie. And not that I would say that doesn't diminish it, but that's just something to keep in mind while watching. I mean, you know me, I had my eyes closed for times, but I had to have my eyes closed, and that's all fine. That's what I do. They did, so they did say they were very intentionally trying to go for the PG-13 rating. Okay.
So it is less gory than it would be if they had gone for the R.
Yes, that's true,
So, like, this whole genre, like, has its progenitors, right? Child's Play being the most obvious one. But then people have brought up the Talking Tina episode of Twilight Zone, which is great. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, it's a doll. She's like little.
Oh, okay. I've seen a couple. I've seen a number of Twilight Zone episodes. I forget.
Yeah, she's not like human size. She's like baby doll size, and she's like, "My name is Talking Tina, and I want to kill you." It's very well done. It's not as scary as again the episode with the mannequin, the dummy.
That's what I have seen.
Oh my gosh, I was like, I never want to sleep alone again. I was like 12 or 13 when I first saw that one. That thing is freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
Have you seen? I haven't seen Child's Play.
I haven't either.
Okay.
I haven't seen Child's Play. I was trying to think of other like ones with dolls that I've seen. Maybe. Well, yes. There is Annabelle from sort of the Conjuring universe and Amityville Horror, where she's also. I guess in the article you mentioned they like. All these dolls have their looks, and they wanted to create a look for Megan and for Annabelle. It's like the braids and the like mouth style almost is like her signature look. So I have seen some of those.
Dolls' popularity as toys, I think, are on the wane. Like Barbie isn't as popular as she used to be.
Oh,
like
I see.
Kids don't play with dolls as much. So I think if you were a kid back in the 60s, 70s, 80s who played with all these dolls, the thought that one would come to life and try to kill you was a sort of weird, terrifying prospect. Or even like Toy Story, right? Like Toy Story seems like a bygone age when you think about like your toys coming to life. I mean, maybe not, but I feel like kids don't play with figure toys as much as they used to. they play with screens a lot, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there was an aspect when you were a little kid of like a creepy doll that was going to come and get you. That was scary. I just think that's not as scary a concept anymore as it was when Child's Play came out or Talking Tina came out. So now I think it's like, so I think the fear element, it's like, and they updated it. They made it a robot, right? Like they made it AI. They made it your devices turning on you. And that I think is a much more modern, relatable fear. The extent to which that scares you, I think it's playing, this is a long way of saying the scariness factor kind of, as it always does, depends on your priors. Yes. Like, are you prone to being afraid of this stuff or not? Like, if you are, that was going to seem a heck of a lot scarier than if you're like, this is not something I ever worry about, so I don't have problems going to sleep tonight, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I don't have kids, so like, it's been a while since I've played with dolls. I have more like stuffed animals at home, but not really dolls per se, and so the fear of dolls is really almost about the instillment of the media. Like, I mean, even though I haven't seen Child's Play, I still know what Chucky is. I still know what Annabelle is. And so the creep factor is more like if their face is very purposely decorated to be creepy. But like with this movie, the scariness aspect is more about how technology ingrains itself into our lives and how comfortable are you with that. And, M3GAN itself is very advanced, and I don't know, I don't work in tech, so I don't know if this is truly achievable at this point in time, but, Gemma has a lot of Alexa-type devices in her home, and how those can be very easily manipulated is probably a fear more closer to where we are right now, technology-wise.
Yeah, well, and I think, too, when Child's Play came out, there was a toy back in, again, like the 80s or 90s that was called My Buddy.
Oh, okay.
That was like a kind of more life-size like doll. Sorry to everyone who I just put that commercial jingle back in there. This is very annoying, and if you ever saw those commercials as a kid, you're definitely humming that to yourself right now since I said it. So I think he was like, again, so it was like it was a very real thing that they were sort of mocking. But yeah, to that end, like, so I think, the movie works as a sort of like fun horror comedy. Look at this crazy doll. She's very scary in and of itself. But like, it had a lot of like deeper points to make about parenting and technology and AI. And like, there's quite a bit to like unpack.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of them definitely... and again, I'm not a parent, but, they really talk about, even from the very beginning, in the very beginning of the movie, they're talking about how she's playing on this, I think it's, at that point, it's just an iPad game from her sister, from Katie's aunt's, Gemma's company.
Oh, yeah, the fake Furby?
Yeah, or like, I guess, there's
his mouth.
It reminded me of all the new Beanie Babies, of how, like, their eyes are so big, and...
Oh, interesting. Maybe it was. I haven't seen the new Beanie Babies. Again, I was thinking of the Furby when that was the toy.
I think definitely probably a combo of all
that. Yeah. Get all your generations in there.
Yeah. Because I mean, when I grew up with Beanie Babies, their eyes were like tiny little black dots, and now like they're huge.
Okay.
But yeah, even from the very beginning, they're in the car, they're driving, and she's playing on the iPad that's kind of linked to this Furby toy. This Furby toy, and the mom is, I think, talking to the dad saying, we talked about limiting screen time and, this thing, and how they're kind of frustrated with this thing. And then when Katie goes to Gemma, she even asks Gemma, like, oh, how much screen time can I spend on this iPad that she gives her just to kind of let her do something, and hasn't even crossed Gemma's mind about limiting screen time for any reason since she's in tech. And then as M3GAN, Gemma is I assume a late 20-something, early 30-something person who is, childless and not, hasn't done a lot of research in what it means to be a parent. So she's like caught off guard by this whole situation. And then as M3GAN has been created, it outsources all of the traditional parenting tasks to M3GAN so that Gemma doesn't have to do any of it. And then, yeah, it kind of begins the question of how much outsourcing is it okay to outsource? And even I think people have had a similar conversation with even just having a real life babysitter of like, maybe if both parents are working, maybe they hire a sitter and then like, okay, how much time are they actually spending with their children versus how much time the sitter is spending with their children. So I think it brings back that conversation in maybe a new light with adding technology into it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely hits on the screen time. I think whether this was intentional or not, there was a moment where like the scene where she gives her the tablet is because Gemma wants to go like work and she doesn't want to be disturbed. And then she's on a computer late into the night. And I was like, I see what you did there. And I feel called out. And you're completely right. I was like, for all of the parents, for all of us saying like kids shouldn't have screen time, I spent my entire life, everything at work for the most part I do is on a screen. And now that we're having Zoom meetings, like I'm on a screen all the time. And I was like, that was an interesting point. And I thought, again, I'm not sure if it was intentional or accidental, but either way, like I was like, I felt called out and you're completely right. Like we're very good at monitoring our kids' screen time and we're a lot less self-aware about our own enslavement.
Absolutely. And even, I don't know as much for the younger kids, but when I was in 6th grade, we started getting laptops to work on schoolwork and everything goes into the computer. And I remember like when I was a younger kid, it was maybe an hour of TV a day. And then because technology was more limited, TV was sort of the main source of your screen time.
Right.
But then, as technology advances, kids are getting phones younger and younger. And then even when we get older and we can moderate ourselves, we also just gravitate towards being on the phone. Like I watch YouTube on my phone. I do a lot of things. I think you're totally right. And then one of the things I really liked about this movie is you can see more and more over the course of the movie of how it like affects Katie, of how she goes from being, she's sad in the beginning because she's just lost her parents, but she still seems to at least be a nice child. And then over the course of the movie, as she gets more reliant on M3GAN, she becomes way more irritable, way more angry, and much more willing to create backlash if Gemma tries to even take M3GAN away.
Yeah, I think so. I think what the movie did well was that it carried it through. Mm-hmm. Like, it's easy to say, oh, screens are bad for kids. Okay, why? Right? Yeah. And I thought one of the things that the movie sort of hints at, and it was fine that they didn't flesh this out, that there's no need for that. I thought it was good that they sort of addressed the issue of special needs, where they talk about, like, for learning, like, the robot never gets impatient. The robot will tell you the same lesson over and over and over and over and over again. And that is something that is very useful in when your child has special needs, because it's almost impossible for any human being to be able to do that. To the extent that, if you have a special needs kid, that kid may have a tablet as a communication device if they're not verbal yet. Mm-hmm. And so then you think, oh, well, the kid's like screen time. We're like, no, but this is this kid's way of communicating. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that we now have these tools to help with, kids and adults of different abilities, right? Like, are you going to call Stephen Hawking's out for being... Yeah. Right? Like, so I thought that was good, because they do address, they're like, it's not so black and white. There are situations where this is really an additive, but they do sort of carry through why it's so problematic for her to be so dependent on screens to the end point of your emotional development is getting stunted by these devices. Yeah. And that if you have bad feelings, you just have to have bad feelings. Like, if you're grieving, it is not good or wise for you to be distracted from that grief by a screen, by a robot doll, by any other thing. You just kind of have to sit with it, and you have to feel those feelings, and you have to go through your emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and the therapist, so in the movie, she gets assigned I guess is therapist the right word?
Social worker? I don't know. Worker? She's like super bad at her job.
Yeah, that was, going back to that was one thing that we found frustrating about them. The social worker had some good scenes, and she's there to point out about how Katie's development is, progressing and stuff like that. But this is like a side note, but when she comes in at the beginning and Gemma's like, oh, but these are like my collectibles, and the therapist kind of forces her to break that kind of boundary of like, no, these are not toys, but she like forces them to be toys. We were all like, it's important to have things that you like, sorry, this is like side tangent. Yeah,
well, and it's important for kids to understand that like not everything is for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like obviously like, and yeah, that was the I guess the broader point about the social worker was the social worker came in. It's important for the social worker to be there, theoretically, because this is a crazy time. They want to make sure the child is going to the best spot. But also, the parents had just died. Like, even Gemma mentions, like, oh, the packages are still coming in. Like, I might just have to unbox this. Like, that's totally normal. Or to me, that's totally reasonable that, like, you're still setting up everything. It's literally the first day. And then the social worker is like, this is not great.
Well, yeah, and I guess it's sort of the point that sort of emphasized for me was that, like, so, there's Gemma, who's not at all planned on having, a child, gets guardianship, and then has to go through all these, like, hoops, and, everyone's very involved, and everyone's monitoring how, like, good a parent she is, and I'm like, I also took that as the sort of statement on, like, if she had the kid, nobody would be this involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, those two systems are not equal. Like, if you get a kid, all of a sudden you're under the microscope, but you can raise your own kids any old way you want within someone else noticing that you're doing a particularly bad job.
Yeah, and even bad parents get through the adoptee network and stuff like that. So it's like, it's crazy from all ends.
Yeah, but I was just sort of like, this level of scrutiny would be good for all parents, but, I don't want to.
But yeah, back to the original point I was making about the social worker was the social worker touches on the topic when, she sees how closely M3GAN and Katie are bonding that, after a trip, and this is also, I haven't double checked this. This is like a psychology attachment theory that, she's latching on to M3GAN because, she's just had this horrible incident and their children are kind of trying to, because they've lost the parent, the child is looking for the next person to latch onto. And typically it would have been Gemma, but now she's latched onto M3GAN because M3GAN is like who she's spending her time with. And then I think at the outdoor school, there's the other parent that Gemma's talking to, and she says, it's so nice for the kids to like be outside and interacting with each other. And then maybe the therapist also says something along the lines of like, development with other people is so crucial when you're growing up, and the screens, I don't think will ever, like, they can replace it in some way that maybe you can communicate with more people who are not directly around you and like stay in touch with people, but also that in-person interaction is so crucial to child development, which is one of the points that this movie was making, in that, yeah, screens can be a tool, but they can't, or like, depending on various child needs and stuff like that, they can't be the end-all be-all. There needs to be both going on.
Yeah, and to a larger extent, like, don't ask me why I was having this conversation at work. I don't know, but I was, and we were talking about, like, robot dolls for, say, adult men, and I was like, it's so dangerous. Like, it's so appealing. It's so appealing.
Technology in general is what you're saying?
No, to have as your girlfriend. I was like, yeah, who wouldn't want a life partner that never talked back, never got angry at you, took all your emotional needs and required none.
Oh, I see.
Nothing for themselves. Right? And I was like...
It was like only a helping hand.
Yeah. It's never a two-way street. You never have to listen to her problems or her needs. And I'm like, well, I get why that's appealing. I'm like, what kind of person does that make you? If that becomes, your primary relationship goal. Like, how do you treat other people?
Yeah, like, where's the empathy?
Yeah. And I think this movie...
Or understanding of someone else.
Right. And I was like, I think this movie did an excellent job of, again, teaching you, like, they started as a kid, but it's like, all those lessons are applicable to adults as well. Like, this is dangerous. It's dangerous for us to get relationship needs from computers, from AI, however you want to put it, from technology, because real human interaction is what teaches us how to be mature, emotionally well, and, like, competent, compassionate human beings. We cannot learn that from robots. And even when you try to make a compassionate robot, that just ends up going on a killing spree. So,
yeah, and it did make me think about, there was basically, I forget how many years ago it was, but there was a Twitter, I think this was on Twitter, but there was like a Twitter AI that was, maybe this is like a separate point, but it was like the Twitter AI was created, and they, like, very quickly became, I think they were feeding in either from Twitter, just, like, Twitter words, or maybe other words. Like, they were getting their information from people it was probably on people when they're online. But that, yeah, like, it very quickly became, like,
a Nazi?
Racist. Yeah, like kind of the worst type of person in humanity. And
yeah, if you were getting your...
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, I don't want you to machine learn off of Twitter. That is a terrifying prospect.
And, like, yeah, like, real people are complicated with different facets. And, like, I think as people hear generally more and more types of stories throughout their life, they, one, get more information, but they have more empathy, and they can then make just probably better decisions overall going forward about how they think about other things.
Yeah. I mean, so all credit to the movie for, like, really bringing, like, a larger point to the fore on that one. I did read another article that viewed the movie, and we don't have time to get into this, but it's out there if you're curious. There's, like, a whole alternate theory of the movie that's just about mean girls. Where, like, M3GAN is the ultimate mean girl. And she's, like, less Chucky and more Regina George.
Oh, yeah.
And she was just talking about, like, the difficulty and violence incipient in being a tween girl, and, like, all the difficulties that come along with dealing with obnoxious boys, and, like, how M3GAN is the ultimate distillation of the mean girl. And I was like, that's an interesting point of view. I don't think that's what the movie was trying to say, but I think you can get from that, like,
yeah, I mean, I guess, like...
Because, like, M3GAN is super cool, right? Like...
Yeah.
So that was another take on it, but, so we also know there's, like, a sequel in production.
Yeah, so, they announced M3GAN, there is definitely a sequel happening, I think, coming out probably 2025. I can look at the text that I sent you.
Yeah, and so to the ending kind of ends on... I honestly, it's really funny. So the ending ends on her, like, home Alexa-type advice, which is named Elsie, I believe. Yeah. And I was, like, thinking about that, and I was like, oh, Elsie's better than Alexa. Like, I like that better. I don't know why. Like, I don't have good reasons for it, but I was just like, you did a better job than Amazon on that one. So then I was like, okay, now we're getting into the sort of Skynet thing. Because I was like, these are two sort of different tracks, but they're parallel. He makes them parallel in Terminator, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Skynet and then the Terminators, right? Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I don't... Usually you fear the smart home and not the robot or the android, right? Usually those are two separate things to fear in most sci-fi genres, but I was like, all right, well, Terminator combined them, but most of the movie was still focused on the Terminator and not the like larger like technological shift, but still.
Yeah, and this movie was like, she could clearly access the internet and started learning things on her own, but it was still more so contained within her. But then at the end they allude to that she's in Elsie living somewhere in the cracks of the technology. But yeah, M3GAN 2.0 set to be or scheduled to debut in theaters in January of 2025.
Shouldn't it be M3GAN 4.0? Sorry, nitpicking.
For what? Like
isn't the 3 in M3GAN the third generation?
Oh yeah, so it is like
maybe at the fourth generation. Sorry.
Yeah, it is. It was like Model 3 something
so it should
something
be
Android.
M3G4N.
Oh yeah.
Pro tip to the people making this movie.
Or you said MEG4N.
4N.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So make the 4 the A.
Yeah.
Whoa, whiffed an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Maybe someone will catch on to that.
Maybe. They have time to change it. They can change it.
Yes. So like, like from a social impact score, like this is a kind of, and I don't want to say like, okay, we just did a whole podcast on like, and again, a million think pieces on the demise of the mid-budget film. Mm. And then you always have some mid-budget film come out there and kill it. And you're like, are they really dead? So
yeah,
I think the movie had made $100 million the last time I checked, but it's still in theaters and people are still seeing it. So it's got legs.
Yeah. According to Wikipedia, the budget was $12 million and the box office so far has been $124.6 million. But yeah, it's still in the theaters. It could get a little more as well.
Yeah, it's gaining traction, not losing it. Mm-hmm. So in terms of a social impact score, I was like, it had a lot of good things to say. What would you give it?
Yeah, I think I'd probably give it an 8.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to do that going into this movie, but I think it's at an 8.
Okay. Yeah, I give it a 7, and same. I was like absolutely not expecting to give it that highest score.
Yeah, I mean, when my friend showed me the trailer, and that's what turned me on to the movie, and we were all seeing it for the memes, but right. It was great.
Yeah, I think, to me, I just thought, obviously, again, it has important things to say, number one, but like number two, I mean, they just nailed the craft of it. Like, I thought M3GAN was terrific, and I'm universally like hate all of the things because they're like CGI and they look clanky and it's not real. And I was like, no, this was great. Like, they absolutely pulled off the most important thing, was to make her like legitimately like creepy.
Yeah.
But still realistic. And I'm like, they did it. And I was like, that was no mean feat. It's not easily done. And so, yeah. All the credit in the world. All right. Recommendations for the week?
So if you do like horror and video games, I have been playing a game, or I finished a game called The Devil in Me. It's part of the Dark Anthology Pictures series. This is the 4th game, and it's by the same creators who did Until Dawn. If you play these types of games, there's kind of one general path throughout the game, but, who makes it out alive at the end and stuff like that is very dependent on the choices that you make and how certain situations may arise later. I'd also recommend any of the other games in the Dark Anthology series.
I'm going to recommend a book this week, Two Family House by Linda Cohen Leugman. Very interesting, like, multi-generational story set in New York with two Jewish families sharing a duplex in New York. It's an interesting read. It's a fun story. So yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, check us out on our website, moviesthatmatterpodcast.com. We have a store, we have merch. We are on Facebook. Chat us up. Stay tuned. Again, this is kicking off our winter season. We have a lot more programming to come. COVID interruptions and releases notwithstanding. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.